Hi, welcome to Constitutional Chats, hosted by me, Janine Turner,
and Kathy Gillespie,
with students
Dakari Chapman
and me, Tova Kaplan.
Join us as we discuss hot topic issues with constitutional experts. It's sponsored by Constituting America.
So welcome to Constitutional Chats with me, Janine Turner. I'm an actress. You can go to JanineTurner.com and find out all about that. I'm also the founder and co-president of Constituting America, and we founded Constituting America in 2010. So welcome to the show. We're multi-tiered. Check out our website at constitutingamerica.org and check out all the many things we do. And my co-president, the co-president, is Kathy Gillespie. Let me tell you a little bit about Kathy Gillespie. Kathy Gillespie is co-president of Constituting America and is one of the 16 private citizens serving on the U.S. Semi-Quincentennial Commission, helping organize the celebration of our country's 250th birthday in 2026. And it is quite an honor that she has been chosen, one of the 16 private citizens chosen to be on this commission. I always like to say, you know, any great project takes two wings, a right wing and a left wing to fly. And without Kathy, I would just be flapping around trying to get all my ideas off the ground. So welcome, Kathy.
Thank you. And that's not true. You'd soar without me just fine.
Not true. Okay, and our other host of Constitutional Chats, another is Tova Love Kaplan. Tova Love Kaplan is absolutely brilliant. She's 16 years old and lives in Chicago, Illinois. She currently serves as the National Youth Director for Constituting America. Quite the honor. And she runs the National Youth Advisory Council. And I always like to brag and say she runs it as if she were a CEO of a top Fortune, what do they call it? Top Fortune 100 companies. She is, I don't really mean that. She's amazing. She's a 3-time winner of our We the Future contest. Check that out at constitutingamerica.org. It keeps your kids busy this summer. Great scholarships, great trips, great mentors. We promote their works afterwards. So she's won the contest 3 times. Left brain, right brain. Entrepreneurial in middle school she won, where she created a marketing plan. How many middle school students are creating marketing plans? She won for PSA entitled Know Your Rights, Read the Constitution. And the PSA she won in high school, when she was in high school. And this past year, she won for STEM, where she created an app, which we are going to have up on our website soon. She is passionate about educating and empowering young people to use their constitutional rights. Tova Love Kaplan, say hello.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you so much for joining us.
Need I say more that Tova got the Constituting America logo up behind her and the rest of us don't have it? That's what I'm talking about. Fortune 500, top 10, 100 companies. What is it called? Somebody tell me. Somebody, you know, that comes out, the top 100 companies.
Fortune 500.
The top
There is Fortune 100
is
also. You're right.
Yep. Okay. So 100, 500, I knew it. So she is the CEO of a Fortune 100 company. All right, Dakari Chapman, no less brilliant, equally as special, is our Constituting America student ambassador. He is 17 years old and currently a junior full-time college student in South Carolina. He has won Constituting America's We the Future contest twice. See, we get to know you when you win. One for Best Public Service Announcement, where he reminds viewers the Constitution is an American thing, so know it. You can see all their works at constitutingamerica.org, and also his logo, it's an American thing, so know it, is on billboards across the country. He also won for a short film, Man on the Street. It's really good, really funny. I especially love the jacket that he's wearing. He is also actively involved in our National Youth Advisory Board. And he's also a working actor, seen most recently in HBO's The Righteous Gemstones and in Netflix Outer Banks, which was just recently out 2 months ago. And Dakari wishes to be an actor, but also a politician. And he says, well, really, wait a minute, you have to be an actor to be a politician. So he is amazing. Both he and Tova Love Kaplan are amazing. Dakari Chapman, say hello.
Hello, folks. And I love the way Janine uses her Texas accent. She says South Carolina. It's great.
I know. It's not exactly the same, but Carolina, South Carolina. We talk a lot faster in Texas. We say South Carolina. And now our special guest, we are very, very fortunate to have the oh so special Shane Tews with us today. She is a visiting fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, AEI, where she works on international communications, technology, and cybersecurity issues, including privacy, internet governance, data protection, 5G networks, the Internet of Things, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. She's also president of Logan Circle Strategies. Previously, Ms. Tews managed internet security and digital commerce issues as vice president of global policy for VeriSign, Inc. She began her career in the George H.W. Bush White House as a deputy associate director in the Office of Cabinet Affairs, and later moved to Capitol Hill as a legislative director for a member of Congress. Shane is currently vice chair of the board of directors of the Internet Education Foundation and co-chair of the Internet Governance Forum, USA. Ms. Tews studied communications at Arizona State University and American University, where she graduated with a bachelor's degree in general studies with an emphasis on communications and political science. Oh my gosh, just reading that, I want to ask you so many questions about so many other topics besides TikTok. We'll have to have you come back. Shane Tews, say hello.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, we are very excited to have you here tonight. And my daughter is glued to TikTok. I mean, all the time. What are you doing watching TikTok? What are you doing watching TikTok? She's a graduate from college, really brilliant young woman, but she is always on TikTok. And she's also been talking lately about how she can just say something on a phone call to a friend, and the next thing she knows, an ad on that subject will come up on her phone. Very frightening. But anyway, I've been trying to tell her that TikTok now is a little iffy. And we know, I was watching, you can tell us more, but I know that India, I believe, has banned it. And our Secretary of State, Pompeo, was on the other night, and Laura Ingraham said, okay, hey, should we be downloading this app? And he said, if you want the communist government to know everything about you and have all your information, feel free to download the app. So I hope my daughter's watching tonight, or someone will be watching tonight that will spread the word that it looks like TikTok is a little iffy. And also now there's this Save TikTok hashtag on Twitter. And what I find interesting about that is, are we going to be so self-indulgent as a country, unlike our founding fathers who were willing to not buy British goods during the revolution and leading up to the revolution to honor America, that we will be willing to have all of our private money, information taken by China and not actually be willing to do the right thing and just want to save TikTok because it makes us laugh? I don't know. I'm a little worried about this. So Shane Tews, fill us in.
So one thing that TikTok is the winner when it comes to COVID is you have a lot of people that are indoors and have time on their hands, and the videos are very entertaining. I actually like a lot of what's going on as far as the talent on TikTok is very good. The question is the platform. So the platform is based, they say it's based in the United States. It's a subdivision of a Chinese company. And the question that we always have when it comes to networking is how much information flows to what points. And we all have to click through them, but they have a thing called terms of use that you click through when you add things like an app onto your phone or when you do things on the web. And so I took just a second to go look at their terms of use, and TikTok says that it does collect a range of information, including where you are at all times, your location data, your IP address, which is a little geeky, but it means like what, where are you getting your, your internet power from your, if you're using a Comcast or Charter, whoever that is, because that's information that the people like to know for technical reasons. They know what type of device you're using. They know all your browsing and search history. So it's not like it's just picking up what's on TikTok. It's picking up everything that you've been doing on the phone. And you're not sure even how long that's going. And this is all in the terms of use. It has your GPS position. Potentially it has your age, your phone number, any user generated content, such as photos and videos that you've stored. It records how long you watch a video, and if you watch it over and over again. Now, some of that could be for advertising purposes, but a lot of the concern is that it's just constantly mining information on you. And you say, well, there's US companies that do that. So why is it so frightening? The Chinese have a lot of people and a lot of time and energy and the ability with compute power to really record everything that goes on. What I really want to caution, especially younger audiences, is you are a big target for information cells on the dark web, because you're new to the space. The older, those of us who are older, we have an established credit history, and one of the things that is potentially going to happen is they're going to try to emulate you online, and you won't know that until you try to go get a student loan, or you possibly try to do some banking transaction, and it turns out somebody else has been you for a long time. You don't know where that all came from, and there's a good chance it was an app, something like TikTok, if not TikTok itself, as well as the political implications of how much information are the Chinese learning about US citizens. When I told a friend of mine I was going to do this yesterday, he brought up a very interesting point. He said that teenagers specifically are very good at going quickly to new adopting technology, which TikTok is relatively new. And he said, if you care about your political point of view, you should care where the technology is coming from, because China does a lot of things that, as people that really believe in the Constitution, we find very questionable. The way that they treat their citizens, the way they cut off and their ability to have freedom of speech, which is why we just in this last week have seen where Hong Kong was supposed to continue to have their ability to be free citizens that had separate law from the way that they treat Beijing. You've seen most of the social media networks pull out of Hong Kong because they don't want to have to share all of their user information with the Chinese government. And TikTok's claiming that they're not doing that. But there's a lot of people that you probably would trust, like the State Department and the Department of Defense, that just suggest that we really don't have this app on your phone. You're on mute. But I can tell that you're impressed.
I said, wow, could you tell that?
I could see.
Wow. Now see, but what concerns me the most is knowing this, will my daughter actually turn it off?
Some care and some don't. It's really interesting. I mentioned it to one of my brothers, and he immediately took it off of his phone. And I have a sister who just can't be on TikTok enough.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And is it true to know where you are, and to know all of your browse history, and to know your GPS location and your phone number and all of that, and your political affiliations. And, this leads to government interference too, and the manipulation of us as a country politically, which a lot of foreign countries are doing. They'll come in and have all this information and know how Americans think. And now okay, I want to turn over to everyone else to ask a question, but you know what my daughter's going to say? She's going to say, all apps say that. So is that true? Or is it just that all apps say that, but this is the Communist Chinese Party?
Well, the reason why most of the apps say that is because these terms of use are written by lawyers that want to make sure that they keep their corporations on the safe side of safe. So they're going to take every plausible thing and say, we're telling you ahead of time, this may happen. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen. However, if it's a US-based app, you have the ability to work with our government if you don't like the information. If what they're telling you that they are collecting and what they're collecting are two different things, you can actually go seek remedy and say, you didn't tell me you were taking this information. Or they can tell you you're taking that information, and then you can choose not to use the app and be like, well, I don't like it when they take my location data. And a lot of times if you turn the location data off, the app actually doesn't function very well, or may not function at all. So it's something that you should know. It's a question we're having right now around the idea of how to manage privacy. We are dealing with issues because most of the information now runs on a global perspective, with what's going on in Europe and California are dictating a lot of this. And one of the things that would be beneficial is if we had a simplified terms of use. I'm a big proponent of doing emojis that would just be like, here's the 4 things that matter. My location data, they're going to collect, yes or no. And I could see which emoji is missing. So I'd be like, okay, I'm cool with these 3, but when it has that 4th one, that's a no-go for me, because I know that that's information that's really vital to people that they like to steal. It's just an idea.
I like that idea.
Keep floating it.
I like that idea a lot. sort of like looking at a tag to say dry cleaner, you're going to wash it, dry clean, whatever.
Yeah.
But I will say those confuse me. I never know what they mean. But that's
the one that says no
right.
iron, you know not to iron those, right? Okay.
Yeah, if there's something through it, right? But that's a great idea because no one wants to read the terms of agreement because they're legalese, just like all of our laws and bills. So no one understands. No one wants to take the time. That's a great idea. Okay, let's see. Who shall I go to first? Tova, do you want to ask a question?
Sure. So, first of all, going back to the main topic of our chat, how close is the U.S. to banning TikTok? Like, is there a substantial movement to do this? Do you think it'll actually happen? And then also, why are we just now being aware of this? Like, TikTok has been a huge app for, the past year that billions of people have been using, or hundreds of millions, I don't know the exact number, but why are we starting to see this awareness and this push to ban it at this specific moment?
Well, there's always been question about it. One of the challenges we have is jurisdiction. So, if you're a corporation, and this is what happened with Amazon yesterday, even though they went forward and contracted on this, they said that basically if you have a device and you have an Amazon email, meaning you're an employee or possibly a contractor to Amazon, they did not want TikTok loaded on the device because they're worried about the TikTok device being able to filter, get into the information that's in the email system. And that would mean more information being stolen from Amazon. And so they suggested that, they actually told anybody you had to take it off. Later in the day, they went back. A lot of questions as to why that happened. But there's been questions about this from the very beginning. Why I mentioned jurisdiction is it's one thing if you say you work at the Department of Commerce or you work at the Department of Defense, and if you have one of our cell phones, you cannot have this app on it. That's completely allowable because it's somebody else deciding what you can and can't have on the device. The challenge is for individuals, for them to forewarn us, and then we don't have a lot of really specific information, which is always a challenge when it comes to these geopolitical issues like we are currently having quite a few of them with China, is the proof points are a little tough. We are suspicious that it's happening, but we don't have a lot of hardcore evidence. And so it's hard to say to the American people, you absolutely should take this off your phone. I'm not sure that they actually have the ability to say US citizens shouldn't have this on their phone, just like they don't have the ability to say US citizens can't have certain devices, which we actually should be kind of okay with that. That's part of being, a free American, but we should also be able to get good advice and have the ability to take it and be empowered by it.
And then why do you think it's happening at this moment?
I think, well, since I spent a lot of time in the cybersecurity space, my guess is that they've seen an uptick in some type of behavior, which is concerning to both the State Department and the Defense Department, which is why they've really kind of, sent some flares out about this. And another part of that is because, TikTok has become extremely popular while we've all been in lockdown and spending a lot of time at home. And, I've got friends that are my age that are making TikTok videos. Believe me, I never thought that I'm sure they're not the target audience, but, they're with their daughters or their kids and they're home making TikTok videos. And some of them are lawyers and I'll text them and say, hey, you might want to think twice about that. It's okay. Why don't you go do that on YouTube? Or why don't you go find another platform to do that on? But TikTok's made it very easy. And that's part of the challenge of technology in general. It's very easy. They call it, it's just plug and play. So you put that app on, it goes, you're able to make a really quick video. It sends it out to all your friends or to the world or, whoever, the audience is. And there's really not much you need to do to make that happen. So a lot of the apps that have been challenging like this are those really easy ones, but at the same time, you don't take the time or have necessarily the understanding of seeing how much information is flowing off of that application once you put it on your phone. So I think it's just a matter of, we'd love to know more and we're trying to learn more about this. But the fact that, that India has said they don't want it in their entire country, they don't do that lightly. There's, there's obviously some suspicion as to where the information is leaking and flowing off of this application.
Isn't Australia thinking about it as well?
Yeah, Australia is usually pretty savvy when it comes to cybersecurity. I work with a lot of their cybersecurity team and, but they're very quick. If they have suspicion, they'd rather go on the safer side of safe and say, no one should be doing this. And then they'll, if they change their mind, they'll come back and say, I guess, we've looked at it and they've tightened security around it, but that's a pretty good indicator. And they're one of what we call, there's 5 countries that are in the intelligence community, and we share information amongst ourselves. I also call them the English speaking union because they all speak English, but it's Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, and England. And that's also why a separate but similar topic is with Huawei equipment. There's a big concern that if we have this equipment in your network, that once it's in one network, it has the ability to suck information off of other networks. And a lot of our networks interconnect for intelligence purposes. So when Australia says they have a concern about it, it's something that would give me pause. India has, some other geopolitical issues with China, but that's a pretty big indicator that maybe we should be thinking twice before putting that kind of app on your phone.
I want Dakar to ask a question, but what does ban exactly mean? I mean, are they going to prevent it and block it from coming up? Or does that mean we're telling you to not use it, but people will just use it anyway? What?
As an individual user, they don't have the legal capability to say you can't download something on your phone. We're Americans, we can do pretty much what we want, but we're also smart Americans. And when the government says they have a concern about something, most people are savvy about listening. That may mean that a lot of people who walk around with a device that is owned by a corporation will outright ban it. And that's their choice, because the device is owned by the corporation. They need to protect their intellectual property, and they need to protect the information that flows across that phone. When they give that phone to you, it's there, you're using that as part of the reason that you work for that corporation. So the ban is easier to apply if you're using a corporate phone and they make a legal decision. As an individual, and you are using your Android or your Apple device or whatever device you have, you just need to make smart decisions, or you should make smart decisions, because a lot of us are on those phones. I'm on my phone all day long. And I would really not like to think that all the information that I am doing on even multiple apps, even if I'm over on eBay or I'm on, YouTube, is flowing because they found a portal that allows information to flow off that phone back into possibly China. So the ban is going to basically say the government's not going to like it. They're going to suggest to the state governments and to the governors that maybe they think about, banning it at that level. But it would be very, very difficult to say that all US citizens can't use TikTok.
Yeah, they just want all their information going into the Chinese government. And you would think that there'd be some sort of loyalty at that point to the country to not give all of our political. But Takari, I want you to talk and ask questions.
Yeah, so as you heard in my bio, that I'm an actor, and everybody's on this whole craze on being like TikTok famous.
Yeah.
Like everybody wants to be TikTok famous. And so I've been hearing, there's been many articles that there's a lot of series, like Outer Banks that I was in, Stranger Things. There's a lot of series that it's been coming out that these TikTok stars are going to be in these series. And like there's these random articles like Addison Rae's going to be in the new lead in Stranger Things, or da-da-da-da. Well, my question, Hollywood, of course, isn't like that. But my question is, a lot of these people who are TikTok famous are getting paid. So how is that going to work?
Well, it is a talent search mechanism. I mean, we saw that with YouTube. When YouTube first came out, a lot of people were YouTube stars. And so this is the current flavor of that. The challenge is everything else up until now has really been US based. And so there are commercial reasons, or, I'm a huge user. I love Google. I use a lot of Google. I love Apple. I have both their products, but I'm a big, I know, and I like the fact that things are seamless. So I happily go back and forth between all that information, but I know that is my exchange there is that for, they're using my information for ad dollars, but I have the ability to go in and control and say, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. I can turn certain things off. So even on YouTube, you would have that ability. And I hear your challenge. You are very talented and you want your talent to be sought out, and you want to go where the talent, scouts are looking. So if they're looking at TikTok, a possibility for you would be to just have a device that's not situated, you use a different email address, you make sure you're using a different password, so you can still go on TikTok, but it would limit the ability of the device to be able to pull information from your other apps. I mean, that's probably the safest way to be able to have it both ways, because you want them to be able to discover your talent, but you don't want that device to be putting you in any jeopardy. But I have heard, yes, that the talent, agents, they're always looking for, I mean, if you're going to put a bunch of talent on there, they're going to go find it.
Do you have a follow-up, Dakari?
Well, no, I was just asking the question. I am most definitely not searching for, talent on TikTok because I have an agent and a manager, so I don't need to do that. But I was just, I know a lot of people who are TikTok famous, and I was wondering. And then my second question was, is this, and this I think is a question that both Tova and I had, is this supposed to be treated as like a national thing, or is this just like a private, like corporate issue?
Well, it's both. I mean, we've just gone through a huge uprise in this country with, it's been going on with Black Lives Matter. And as I was saying, my friend pointed out, he said, if you really are, it's becoming a political platform as well. But if you care about your politics, and a part of what you care about is how you get your message across, who you're getting your message across to, you should care to use a platform that is not potentially exploiting people. And all the challenges that we know that exist in China with, I follow what's happening with the Uyghurs, and I think the way that they're treating their own people in a certain part of their country, and the way that they're really, it harkens back to a lot of, concentration camps and terrible things. Why would you want to use something that is from a country that has that as a permissive activity and is very, permissive of, surveillance of their own people and government challenges that we really don't hold as a value here in this country? So I would also ask people to think about that. Going on other platforms to be entertained or to be seeking talent is certainly fine. But I think part of the challenge is, TikTok's a Chinese app, and do we want to be supporting the way that the Chinese government treats their own citizens?
I want Kathy to ask a question, but so many things are going through my mind. One of which is, when you get an app, how do you know it's Chinese? I don't think any of us knew that TikTok was a Chinese app. Yeah. And the other thing is that when you told Dakari to use a separate phone, that they can't trace things, does this mean they can go into your emails? Like if you give them an email, they're able to break into every email you write that you think is private?
Yeah. This is a still, but so older people like me, the mattress tag, when you go to buy a mattress and it tells you can't take the tag off, and you're like, that's ridiculous. But I call this the mattress tag of, every time you put down a new app and you're like, yes, it says allow, do I want to use my phone? Well, to use a lot of the capabilities of the application, you usually say, yes, you can have access to my contacts. Yes, you can have access to my phone, which means the phone, not just the messages, but actually listening to you. Yes, to other things that are on the phone. If you say no to that, a lot of times the actual application doesn't have the effectiveness, or may not possibly work at all. So that's one thing that's a challenge. The second is, it is tough to tell where these applications come from. And I'm a big Apple user because they curate. So they actually take the time to look at the security applications and make sure that there's certain things that are at the baseline of service that Apple doesn't want your device to be a problem for you from a security perspective. It's one of the reasons why Apple products also cost more. So around the rest of the world, Android is much far away more used than Apple because it's more expensive. But one of the reasons why, Apple's more expensive, that Android is cheaper is because they don't have any gating mechanisms to make sure that the things that you do on your phone have a level of protection. And Apple's even going much more beyond on that. Google, who runs the Android platform, does that as well, but it's not as much in the forefront. And they also don't own the hardware. So it's harder when you're using an Android device to have those same levels of protection, where Apple, it's all built in. So that's just a consumer and a commercial choice that you can make. Samsung, who does do Android devices, has a much more Apple-like security mechanisms that are engaged on them. So it's one of those things you need to think about when you're both downloading an app and deciding what kind of phone or equipment you want to use, is how much security does it allow me to have? And then sometimes you have to do a little research. Otherwise, in the United States, we're good about prosecuting on the back end once we realize something's wrong. Sometimes you have to take a little more time and be a informed consumer.
So we should have a little emoji that says what country it is, so you
Yeah,
know what kind of
that
app.
would hurt. Right. I mean, a
Yeah,
lot
with the flag. But real quick, I want Kathy to talk. But are you saying that they can go into your emails
possibly.
too?
Yeah.
Yep. Fantastic. Okay, Kathy.
Well, we've got one of our donors, Mr. Bill Konecki, has got a question, and he asks, if posting videos on TikTok is so easy and it is a competitor to YouTube, why isn't there an American counterpart to both platforms, one that minimizes private data collection and emphasizes free expression without regard to political censorship and correctness?
It's a great question. It's just a matter of what consumers are willing to use. And TikTok made itself very easy to use. And, YouTube, YouTube was like that. And I think it now has many more things that go on. And TikTok's very much specifically for, it was entertainment, but now we're seeing that it has a political edge to it as well. I'm sure, our friends at Facebook are looking at this. They usually are very quick to emulate if they're not, or purchase, because they see the ability to do this. I don't think that our attention was as focused on this at the same time that the Chinese were looking at doing TikTok. I mean, the idea of having the shorter clip videos, to some people, like, that seems very ADHD. Like, why does it need to be short? But then when you watch them, you kind of get the cleverness of it. It's just something that for me, it's just kind of, it entertains you for a couple minutes. People have been watching cat videos though for years, and I don't get that either. So he has a very good point. I hope that we see one of our, very innovative American companies or a new startup come in and compete with TikTok. I think that'd be fantastic. Why it hasn't happened yet, is your guess is as good as mine, but I think that we should use this as a opportunity to get in there and compete against them.
Okay, Tova.
Right. So, as it's been established, this is a big issue for consumer privacy. And does deleting the app erase all those security risks, or once the app's on your phone, is it it's too late? And other than deleting the app, what kind of protections can we proactively enact to protect ourselves as consumers?
So one would hope once you delete it, it is gone. But my guess from doing security work would be that it doesn't leave. So that is a challenge. But you really go look into your settings in your phone, and it'll tell you what apps are accessing certain components of your phone. So it's like I mentioned, your contacts, your phone, the actual phone calls. Those are things that you can look at, and you can say yes, no. It's like location. You can say only when using app, or it can say always, or it can say none. Now, if I go on Waze and I want traffic information and I say you can't have my location, it makes Waze really not a very, it doesn't give you what you need out of the Waze application. So you have to understand sometimes that there's certain information you have to give the application to make it work. In the case of TikTok, you don't need to know where you are. It doesn't need to know your contacts. The only reason why, in theory, it wants to know your contacts is, let's say you make a lovely dance girl video and you want to send it out to everybody you know, it would want access to your contacts. But at the same time, then it grabs your contacts, and then it's creating its own network to see who you know, and then it's going to use that information to go to the next stage to see who they know. And you don't always know why they're using that information. Sometimes they're doing the Venn diagram to see what your geopolitical situation is, what are your political leanings, what is it, may just be as innocent as realizing that I have a shoe problem and they can sell me more shoes, which I'm candidly okay with that part of it. What I don't want is them, gathering enough information to know when I'm home, when I'm not home, what my political likes and not dislikes are, unless I have chosen to tell them that. So the key thing is to look at make sure you look at your settings. Again, that very boring, terms of use, but it's worth taking a look at it. And if you guys want to help, and if somebody wants to launch my emoji idea, I don't know how to code, but somebody, we should, I've talked to the App Association about it. I've talked to several lawyers. I've talked to privacy people. It's make it simple so you can look at it and say, yes, I'm cool with this, or no, you're taking way too much information off this app. I don't want you to know that much about me.
Right. And can I ask
Okay,
a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So like one thing I've heard a lot from people my age is like, oh, well, okay, I guess, you know, they're taking my data, but I don't have anything to hide. You know, I'm just a teenager. I'm not, you know, doing any undercover activity. So if I don't have anything to hide, why should I be worried? So what would you say to people who have that mindset of, oh, well, we're living in a world where everyone knows everything about me anyway, so why should I be worried about that? What would you say?
So this goes, I made a bit of a comment about this earlier, but it's a bit of an adult thought, but at some point you're going to want to have more banking elements in your life. You might want to get a student loan, or you might want to get a car loan, or even just the idea of credit cards. And what happens is, because the younger you are, the cleaner your credit is. What they like to do is they buy your information on the dark web. They buy your social security number, your student information if they can get it, just enough information that they can go make applications, and they start to create a credit existence that looks like you. And they use your credit, which basically means they steal your identity and they steal your ability to have market power. And then they don't pay that. They're not going to pay those. You know, they're going to run up a bunch of credit card bills, and then you go to get a student loan or a car loan or eventually a mortgage, and you're going to find out that somebody's been impersonating you this whole time. That happens quite often, and they're using your identity as financing for their own life. And then the thing about criminals, from I'm doing, you know, over 20 years in this space, is that bad people are bad people. So once they get your information and they use it for one bad element, there's a good chance they're going to keep testing how far they can use your identity until it washes out. And by the time it washes out, that's about the time you get notified that somebody's been using your identity, and it's too late. So it's very important to protect your personal information. It's not just about advertising. It's about making sure that you have control over your persona, especially from a financial perspective. Sorry, it's a little parent talk for you there.
Yeah, no. It's really, really good. And I don't want to go into the weeds, but it would be like, okay, if they do that, how do you prove to them that you really didn't spend that money? But I think that's a whole nother, a whole nother. You say, hey, I wasn't me. And they're like, well, sorry, it was you. I mean, I think that would be the big problem. Can you go back though, just to recap, why if this particular app that's Chinese based is worse in gathering information and what they can do with it than a regular app, an American app?
Right. So let's go back to what happened with Cambridge Analytica. So Cambridge Analytica was able to find a loophole in the way that Facebook was allowing them to purchase information off of Facebook users. And then they turned around and used that for political gain. And not only in the United States, they did it in the United Kingdom, and they probably did it in other locations. They had a pretty big, group of, their clients. And what they would do is they were using that information, kind of against us, but like to push people in a certain political direction. So think about what happened in Cambridge Analytica, and then do that like 10x or 100x. That's what the Chinese constantly are building a base of information on, not only American citizens, but they're specifically pretty fascinated with us because, we have a lot of money, we have a lot of capital, we have a lot of the ability to get loans because that's the way that our banking system works. And sometimes people just data hoard. They don't know exactly what they're going to do with it, but they know the more information they have, we're on the brink of quantum computing. So that means that they're going to be able to do exponentials, and then they're training artificial intelligence off of all this information as well, which isn't necessarily bad. I'm a huge proponent of AI for good. But there's a level of, they're using all that to train on us. And at some point, somebody might figure out some derivative that is going to be a net negative to a large group of people when they figure out how to exploit it. And it's just that you're giving information to people that don't have your best interest at heart. Getting a lot of nodding heads. I feel like I should give you all ice cream after this because you're all going to be sad.
I no. But so they can use it against to sway the American people in political areas as well. Our mind. It's like power over our minds in a way, isn't it?
As we've all heard a lot about the thought bubbles, and it's even easier, especially as we're all, in a lockdown situation, to get very tunneled into one area of information. And if you don't really validate and fact check information on a regular basis, you start to get this, you know, tumbling effect. I quite often, when one of my relatives calls me and tells me something I think is kind of silly, I'm like, where did you hear that? And I would like to run through that. And sometimes they realize they don't really even know. It just gets in there. And that's a long time psychological warfare technique that has been used in the, you know, in military for years. I mean, for thousands of years. That's been it's just disinformation. Disinformation is something that we perpetually need to fight against. You and I can completely disagree on an issue, but I want to make sure that we're doing that on a factual basis, and that you're not doing this because you've been scared into a position because you've been told a lot of things from an unknown source, the infamous they, that are telling you that something bad is going to happen if you do something, and that it's very easy for that to happen on the internet. And that's one of the things that the Chinese have absolutely been spending some interesting time figuring out how to do that.
Well, there you have it. I mean, that's the reason to not use the app right there. Dakari.
Wow. That's all I can say. Wow. Okay, so pause, rewind button on my remote. So you said, whoa. My question to you is this. This is what I say every time. My question to you is this. So you were talking about like the misinformation. So there's another thing when I'm scrolling through Facebook sometimes, you know, sometimes you look at stuff on Facebook and you're like, this is completely ridiculous. It'll be like something just completely not true. You know it's not true. Then you look at the little link and it goes Babylon Bee. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those, that would not be a trusted source of information. I would not be taking stuff off Babylon Bee. But it's also like when you see something and you have to realize it's the Onion and you're like, okay, that's actually so funny. I hope it's not true. And then you realize it's an onion piece. You go, okay, somebody's just farcically using a bunch of people, you know. So yes, it's always good to fact check.
Right. So with TikTok, I've noticed that, you know, like a lot of people say it's being used for like political gain and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. But my thing is, sometimes I'll try to post stuff even about constituting America, and it will not let me publish it.
On Twitter or
on
Facebook?
TikTok.
Oh, that's interesting. You don't hear a lot about them doing surveillance and pulling things down on TikTok. So I would.
Oh, they ban a lot of stuff. I mean, they ban a good bit of stuff.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. It's funny. You don't hear that as much in the news feed as you do about Facebook and you know, Twitter, which I realize, you know, everybody's trying to figure out where the line is. That the line between misinformation and my opinion, and they are social media platforms. They're there to be, you know, places for people to socialize. So, you know, the idea of, you know, you may not like my opinion, but I should be able to voice it is one thing. It's another to basically just flat out lie and then try to sell it as news. But I didn't realize that TikTok was doing a lot of it, adulterating of the information or pulling it down or not letting it go up. So I would love to stay informed about that.
I only wish people would let you express your point of view on social media without being attacked. I mean, there's such a gang mentality on social media. I have found this to be so damaging to my daughter. When she expresses something that is a different political viewpoint, she has like an avalanche of people attacking her, saying horrible things on social media because she's not in the same train of thought that they are. And it's such intimidation, and I can really see the damage. I can really see the damage that's happening to my daughter. I can see a shift. You know, they're winning. And if only it were a free expression of ideas.
Well,
and
you know,
opinions.
Janine, you know, I you know how I am. Sometimes I'll post things, and I am so prepared for it now. In the beginning, I would post things on Facebook or Instagram or and there'd be like mobs of people, you know. And like now, I'm just like, ooh, I can't wait to see what they say about this one.
Well, the problem is that these are people that she knows, you know.
Oh, there's
that
people I know.
Publicly, and yeah, I don't know. She's having a bit of a difficult time with it, and I just wish it were a free exchange of ideas. Okay, Kathy, go ahead.
When we have one of our listeners, Emery Guveniller, who agrees with Dakari. He says that TikTok has a shadow banning system where they do the things just mentioned. They also won't put those videos on the For You page that they don't approve of, and they limit dissenting information they don't approve of as Twitter and Facebook. So I thought that was interesting. But another question is, I recall a while back, Facebook, a lot of people were doing this thing with Facebook where they would take their profile picture and they would run it through some sort of app, and it would age you to show what you would look like maybe as like 80 years old.
Yep.
And someone said that that was a Chinese app that was doing that, and people started to warn you not to do that. And so I was just wondering, are there other social media apps that you know of that we should worry about?
Well, that has a twofold element. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a big proponent of artificial intelligence for good. We should find great, the best that we can. It'll move us forward in a lot of ways that technology works. But what was happening on that specific app was that it was training the AI for facial recognition. So you were voluntarily putting photos in there. It's like, and you see them like every couple months, there's a new one. Everybody goes, oh, it'll make you just see which one of your stars you look like. And then of course you're feeding information. That's what Cambridge Analytica was doing, is you'd take some stupid quiz and then it would feed all the information in the background about you while you were finding out that what your favorite monkey is or whatever, whatever the thing was. On the aging thing, it was actually, it was just training the artificial intelligence to be able to identify you and facial recognition and, figuring out how you would look in different instances. So that isn't particularly a Chinese app. It could be, but it's just in general, not a good idea. Anytime I see those or I see the quizzes, I just want to tell my friends that do, I'm like, do not do that. You're just falling into a trap. It's like the equivalent of like, stopping and when you things that you get in the mail, or like stopping and somebody stops to talk to you and they somehow talk to you out of $20. I mean, you're getting fast talked.
Okay, I didn't know if Kathy wanted to say something else. Yeah, if you're forward thinking about this, if someone is gathering the way you think, the way you write, the way you speak, your facial recognition, someday they could create a clone of you, right?
A version
or no, like an artificial, not a literal clone genetically, but let's say they do an artificial you write out a Blade Runner, right?
Right. They call it, that's deep fakes. Yeah.
That speaks like you and looks like you and says all the things like you, and yet it's pretty frightening. We may not see that in our lifetime, but Tova and Dakari might.
Oh no, we're very close to that. The deep fakes have already been an issue. They tend to be more on a non-audit. They're not in a moving fashion. A lot of times they're usually just in a kind of a flat surface. But they, we had trouble with that with the last election cycle, with them embedding pictures and making one political person look like they were in a situation that they weren't in, or putting their head on it. It looks very real. It's very hard to tell the difference on that. The other thing is what you're talking about, like gathering information and looking at your writing style. They call it spearfishing, and it's a big issue. And I talked to a lot of senior executives and companies, and for a while, and it still is an issue, is that they would monitor the email of a corporation, and it would say, they would realize when the chief financial officer, whoever the person was that had to approve financial transaction, was going to be on vacation. They had figured out how to mimic their writing style. And then why they call it spearfishing is they would figure out who the second or third in charge would be. And they would send a note saying, hey, I just left to the south of France with my family on vacation, but we have a new vendor and I didn't get this approved before I left. Can you go ahead? It's okay, just go ahead and approve this. And it was amazing how many chief financial officers I talked to had that happen in their organization, and they were losing tens of thousands of dollars because it looked just like the email that they would normally send. The artificial intelligence, or maybe it might have been the natural intelligence, but they sit and watch and they see, and then they'll note certain things that they know that you always talk about, like, hey, by the way, pet your dog Katie on the way out the door, you know, so they knew how to really personalize it. And they do quite well with these scams on getting money from corporations. So if it works and those are just the ones that get written about because the dollar number's high. I'm sure it happens quite often as well on an individual level. And it's just, you know, maybe a less of a dollar amount. So we just don't hear about it in the news as much.
Really scary. Okay, Tova.
Right. So how has this issue been playing out on the international diplomatic arena? Like, how has the U.S. been trying to confront China about this? Has China issued any statements? Are they just categorically denying it? Like, can you give us an idea of how this is playing out on a wider scale?
So there's something called the Belt and Road Initiative. The Chinese have been basically buying off other countries through usually low interest loans, and they bring in a lot of infrastructure. So in Africa, where they have a lot of the minerals that we need for cell phones, so, you know, bauxite, which comes usually from like Tanzania, they'll go in and they'll build them a $1 billion airport. And while they're there, they'll put all the infrastructure in place. And then when they leave, you are now connected back to Beijing. The Russians used to do this. I mean, this is not something that's new. We saw this a long time ago. And a case a couple of years ago was they were spending, all of a sudden the Chinese got very interested in the Dominican Republic's baseball program. And they were building these beautiful large stadiums that were basically just huge listening devices that were going back to the United States. It was as close as they could get to the United States, but you know, it was a big gift. And so the people of the Dominican Republic didn't have the money to fund a great big baseball stadium. They have a very good set of talent, and they wanted to, you know, be able to amplify that. When the Chinese give them money, you know, there's a second dual use for that. And the second use is usually gathering intelligence. And we've seen that in Europe more now than we have in the past. The Europeans have been more susceptible to it. The United Kingdom with Brexit, they've been having a lot of financial issues. So this is one of the undertone geopolitical issues around whether or not they go to Huawei equipment for 5G, is that there was a cabinet meeting, and the people that were domestic, they weren't the ones that were worrying about intelligence, said it doesn't really matter. Like, you know what, it's cheaper. See, this Huawei Chinese equipment's cheaper, which is true. The reason why it's cheaper is because they stole intellectual property from a US company, and they are funded by a state government. So, you know, if we did that, our stuff would be cheaper as well, but we don't do that. We're a capitalist nation here. And so we win by other measures. Once the Chinese system's in there, it's, you know, when you make a decision, especially on things like telecommunications equipment, it's in for a long time. So you made that decision, you really made a decision for the next 10, 15, 20 years on who's going to be your partner. And if you choose to go with the Chinese, you are most likely helping them continue their intelligence gathering operations. So that's why when you go back to TikTok, it seems very innocent. Like there's just a bunch of people jumping around and having a good time, and it's entertaining me and they're enjoying doing it. But it's also possibly one of the most clever things that you can think of in this moment where everybody loves that haptic response of seeing people say yes to your post, and you like the dopamine hit that you get. And, you know, and now all of a sudden we're doing more and more of it because it makes me feel good. And the whole time I'm sending more information back to China. So that's, again, you know, we're keep waiting for the major proof points, but it is highly speculative that that's a lot of what's going on here.
Wow. So we're being played. They understand the American psyche, and, you know, we're going, loves to just you just said it perfectly. Where are we? Kathy, Dakare, who's next?
Yeah. Shane, girl. You're bringing it tonight. You're bringing it. Okay. Here's my question. So, you know, in my house, I have 7 Alexas. 7.
Did
and
they
they
make
like
sense? Why do you have, do you just have them all over the place?
Yes. And they like turn on, like, specifically in my room.
I'm actually surprised. Mine's right here that it didn't go off when you said that, because usually
right. So they turn on lights, There's this big thing. It's like, oh, they're listening. And sometimes in the middle of the night, my Alexa will be blue, and I'm like,
right, why is it on?
You know,
it's constantly listening. Yeah.
So tell me more. And you have one, so I must be safe. We'll keep them. Grammy, we'll keep them.
You know, it's a personal choice. I have a lot of, my friends that are in the spook area that think I'm crazy, and I'm like, I like convenience, and I know what I'm getting myself into. I actually have gone to a dual house. So well, actually, three. I have Alexa on every floor, and I've recently gone to Google, and I talk to Google on certain things and Alexa on others. Google's in charge of my lights. And a part of it was just a friend of mine came over and I was having trouble with Alexa. He goes, you need to get Google equipment. And since I'm in the tech industry, I was like, interesting. I've made my Siri has an Australian male voice and he sounds very handsome, but he just doesn't seem to be the brightest thing. Plus, now I'm so used to talking to my devices that I just say things like Siri, he doesn't listen. See, he doesn't have that ability, which is actually a safety feature. You have to push the button for Siri to be able to talk to you. But it is a personal choice. The conveniences are amazing. I love the information flow. I like the fact that I can get my music from either one of them or all three of them, but I know that it is listening to me all the time. I happen to live by myself, so I don't talk out loud. They're not hearing a whole lot, but mine does the same thing. Every once in a while I just see the little light go on, and or when I'm watching a television show and anything remotely sounds like Alexa, she talks back. She's always
actually Siri does have something where you don't have to press the button. You can just say, hey Siri.
Yeah, see, you've made a choice. That is your choice. But you know that now Siri is listening to you all the time. It's also, all three of those are training their artificial intelligence on our voices at all times. If you use Google,
go ahead.
So I'm like a lot of us, I'm, on Zoom calls all day long, or you're on WebEx, or you might be on BlueJean. And then I noticed that a whole group wanted to go on Google Chat the other day, and it actually was capturing the entire conversation. You could put, what's the thing you do on the bottom, where you can, the entire conversation comes up. And I realized it was training the AI on us while we were discussing it. What was interesting is I don't think we had to do a click through that said that we gave them permission. I guess just being on the Google app, we were giving it permission, but they're constantly training it. So all of those devices are doing that. Just know that that's happening.
So Siri is listening to you all the time.
If you enable it in the way that Dakari has enabled his, that's actually a choice. You can disable that. You have to enable it, and then you have the ability to disable it.
Okay, they'll have to teach me that later.
When I talk to Siri, I don't ever get the answer I need. That's what I don't understand. That's a bigger problem for me. But
I know she's always going to Wikipedia, and I'm just like, no.
Well, but what I think is in conclusion, because we have 1 minute, Kathy might want to ask we have 1 minute. Well, I think it's frightening that they can know that you've left your house, and they know when you come home to your house. I mean, that's scary. They know when your house is very vulnerable at that point. But not to mention giving all the information. They're very clever. I think this is a new warfare. This is a new form of warfare against foreign countries that don't have our best interests at heart. Kathy, we're 30 seconds.
Well, I just want to thank Shane. We've all learned so much tonight. And one of our listeners said, this is alarming on several levels. How do you recommend we share what we learned tonight? Read TikTok. And I would just say that we'll have this up as a podcast, and you can find us on Spotify and iTunes. And please share this and put it out there on your social media and help us spread the word, because this is really important information. And I'd also just wanted to give Shane a chance to mention her podcast that she does. If you liked hearing Shane talk about technology, you have a podcast, I think, every other week.
Yes, it's called Explain to Shane. It is hosted by the American Enterprise Institute, where I'm a visiting fellow. And I just really talk about current technology and a lot of times how it works and how it doesn't work and what's the geopolitical situation behind it. So a lot of what we talked about tonight, this would be a perfect situation of things that I talk about on my podcast. So I'd love to have you guys as listeners, also willing to take suggestions. And if you want to know more about TikTok or any of these issues, the American Enterprise Institute does have a wonderful tech team, and we follow these issues very closely. We write on them every day.
So let's explain to Shane.
Explain to Shane.
Explain to Shane. That's wonderful. Well, you also have a great voice, so you'd be great for podcasts. Really, as an actress, I pick up on great, voice talent. Well, thank you, Shane Tews. You've been really, 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 really wonderful tonight. We appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. This has been a delight.